Hi, guys. I'm thrilled to say it is actually turning into a nice day for the first time in a week here in the collapse of global industrial civilization up here in the chilly Finger Lakes region of New York State on the final day of May 2019. We're going to head out to somewhere in, I hope, sunny California, where I have the great pleasure and honor of speaking with Keith Hayes today. This is hopefully going to be a rollicking conversation. Those of you who are not aware of Keith, he is the brains behind K-Dog, one of the great one-stop shop in the Doomosphere. K-Dog and his excellent adventures at chasingthesquirrel.com. And we're going to be talking with Keith about how he put this unbelievable compendium of collapse together here in a few minutes. But we're going to start off with just hearing from Keith about how he got down here in this rabbit hole himself. So, Keith Hayes, come on and say hello to the folks, and we're going to dive right into this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm happy to talk to everybody here. I want to correct one thing right from the beginning, though. I'm actually in Seattle, a suburb of Seattle, not in
Oh, I thought you
California.
were in California.
Oh, no. I'm a Seattleite, so
I don't know how.
yeah, gives things kind of an interesting perspective
It's
on its own.
Yeah,
But
it's probably. Oh, I totally
we'll see
forgot
how
to.
that.
I totally forgot to mention Keith. I don't have much of a bio here. Keith has a master's degree in software engineering and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Keith says, my contribution to collapse awareness is that I can bring a technical perspective which is fact based and with a mathematical awareness that often is sadly lacking in discussions of collapse issues. The best way forward is to change lifestyles, and to do that, the common culture needs better values. I'll even say that is the only way forward, for men have flown far too close to the sun, and now we are about to make like Icarus. So that's a little bit of a background, but Keith, why don't you just tell us, when did you first figure out in your life that we might be getting ready to make like Icarus?
It was a long time ago. I was about 10 years old, and I was in a gas station. It was an old school gas station, full service. I was with my father. We were alone. He had a old Ford Falcon, yeah, faded paint. Remember, green. And at the time, I had been wondering where gas came from because I was 10 years old. I was learning about life, understanding where things came from. See cows in the field. I understood they got butchered. I could, get paid 50 cents for mowing the lawn. And, but where's this gas come from? And so we're at this gas station, and I asked my dad, where's that gas come from? And I'm thinking there's like a pipe underground, bringing it, And he tells me there's these lakes in Texas, and there's these big lakes, and, and I knew Texas was big, but I also knew that, 10 years old, that lakes underground are filled with sand.
So
And there
underground
isn't
lakes,
much.
you didn't make that. So you're talking underground lakes of gasoline underneath the state of Texas. There you go.
That's what my dad's telling me. And then so the next thing I ask him is, well, how long is it going to last? And he says, 500 years.
All right.
And then he says, so we don't have to worry about running out because that's other people's problems. We don't have to worry about looking at 500 years ahead. We only have to look 100 years ahead. And that was his position on life. Now, I'll describe my father briefly. Okay, he was the son of a minister. And so he looked at life through a religious perspective. And one thing that was impressed upon me growing up was that, I personally don't care for a lot of dogma and stuff, so don't think be drawing conclusions about what I am. But I'm telling you that one thing that was impressed upon me is that, we should be doing things that matter. We're sentient beings. We're here for a purpose. And so when he said 100 years, he meant 100 years, that we actually should be concerned about the future. And so there's this thread of Americana that was impressed upon me about caring about the future, which is totally opposed to what it appears our common culture has devolved to. But that's a nasty word, devolved. It's been the same all along. Anyway, that's a lot. Did I say all that?
Yeah, so that was a lot going through your head at age 10. So give us how you went from that gas station at age 10 to the I don't know if you define yourself as a collapsitarian.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Today.
Well, yeah, that's obviously too much for a 10-year-old to deal with. So the next thing that happened was nothing. I grew up. I went to high school. I went to college. I educated myself, and I was living a normal life. And I was thinking the big brains were taking care of the problems. There was the 60s and the 70s, which I was too young to participate in, but I was able to read the newspapers. 14 years old. I wasn't participating in any kind of free love, but I was sure reading about it, and I was reading about limits of growth, and I was reading about, and I was understanding, and because I have a high aptitude for technical things, that I was understanding that the world had a finite amount of oil, and that our culture was totally dependent on it, and that we were becoming more and more dependent on it all the time, and that when it ran out, we weren't going to be ready, and it was going to be a disaster. And so that's where I was.
That was back in as early as the 70s. Yeah. You were already starting to figure this out back in as far back as the 70s.
Oh yes,
oh,
sure.
Really?
There was an awareness then. And then what happened was the Reagan era and the Thatcher era came along, and the awareness of the future, caring about what we were becoming, that awareness vanished, and media came along, and I think what happened, if you really, you want a conspiracy theory here, well, make one up. Yeah, I lived through it. Vietnam War happened, and I think the government kind of figured out how to manage people. And, I think we've been managed for a long time now.
Cradle to grave, I would say.
Yeah, and now we're reaping the rewards, which is a future we're not prepared for. That's where we are. That's horrible. So let's be more optimistic than that.
Well, so between the 80s, you see the big turn downward, when Jimmy Carter passed the baton to Ronald Reagan, and he yanked the solar panels off the roof, and from then on, it's been how would you describe it from the time Ronald Reagan took office till Donald Trump took office? Has it been a straight downward plunge?
Okay, at that time I was optimistic.
Oh, really?
Ronald Reagan would have his day, every dog has his day, and then serious people would get back in charge, and the panels would get put back on the White House roof, and so on. And a similar thread happened just before Trump's election. I heard a lot of younger people saying, well, this will be good because he'll shake things up. And of course, that has not happened. It's gotten worse. And no, people do not get scared straight. But at the time, I thought things would get better. I didn't understand that it was going to be a progressive thing and that the neocons would get in charge. And then 9/11 happened, which totally changed America. And we basically became a different country. And
And what way?
you know, and so the war on terror has been dominating everything, and everything has been couched in that perspective. And so dealing with energy problems, America isn't. So we've been very distracted successfully. And I think it's been a concerted effort.
Why, certainly. It's been it's been the number one goal, as far as I can tell, of pretty much everybody. So, talk a little bit about why do you think we have let ourselves become distracted? I mean, why isn't this discussion that we're having here on Collapse Chronicles and you're having on your K-Dog website, why is this not the single biggest story on the planet, the single biggest story in the history of humanity? What is it about humans that just are not interested in this story? Any theories?
Yeah, that's something that really mystified me, and that's something I had to get an answer to, and so I started looking into it. And this was several years ago, and the basically, a doomer is concerned with the depletion of resources and not dealing with our future, and that it became obvious to me that people weren't being concerned about this the way they should be, and why weren't they? And the answer to that question, trying to answer that question became as important as, the depletion issue itself. And what I came around to was that people are primarily directed by social impulses. We do things for approval. We do things for love. We do things to fit in. We are logical within limits, but we will believe stuff that is batshit crazy if it is socially advantageous or socially right to think so. So this means that, somebody puts on a suit and automatically what comes out of the mouth becomes truth. And somewhere in the back of your mind, all this stuff is coming in. And people are not as logical as they think they are. And where it comes from is man is a technical animal. Whether it came out of trees, started walking around, big animals, started throwing stones, whatever. We got our food through technical means. We sharpened sticks and began a long road of technical innovation. Now, a fact of technical innovation is that you're going to be more efficient if you don't think about the consequences. And so when we solve a problem, we're only interested in solving a problem. We don't think about what happens afterwards unless we deliberately make a separate discipline, like being a futurist or something, to actually address that. And we respect that. And so where it comes from now is our culture has got really messed up values. We are not putting any value on these things that are looking towards the future. And that's what I found out. There's more to it. Basically, the track of industrial civilization is no different. Here's this huge peak called the Industrial Revolution, but really it's just another boom and bust cycle, which has characterized human activity all along. We're presented with problems. We technically innovate. We solve the problems. Then we overpopulate. Then we technically innovate, solve the problem, overpopulate, and from one boom bust cycle to the next. And, That's where we are. That's what I found. I believe I found out.
So we are entering the bust cycle of the global industrial civilization boom. And where are we on the precipice of shifting from boom to bust here in mid 2019?
We're in a period of time where things are going to look normal for a little while longer, and then, Counselor's Long Emergency is going to pick up steam, and there's going to be some changes so that, say, 10 years from now, things will not look the way they do now. I can't predict what it's going to look like, but things will kick in because the math says they have to. It's not a matter of studying something, being real smart and spending a lot of time. No, it's, in physics, some problems can be solved from just the outside. It's just the energy constraints to give, whatever equations you come up with, if they correctly describe the situation, they can be solved, there's your answer. And, the math says that we're going to fall because, the world's only had an endowment of 3.5 gigabarrels of oil to begin with. And America already would be out of oil, except for fracking, except for technical innovation, except for what I just said about people always technically innovating themselves out of situations and never looking towards the future. Now, that's fine, but technical innovation can't go on forever. That's what's wrong with it. But now we have a culture that believes it can. We believe in magic. We believe in superheroes. We believe that it's possible to make an electric car to solve all the problems, forgetting that where does the energy to charge the batteries come from? People are in la la land. And I just can't see anything good happening. So how do you deal with it? And then that's one thing we really should talk about. Is you get on an excellent adventure and you find out about collapse and you find out the world is going in a bad way and nobody's caring enough about the problem. How do you deal with that?
Exactly.
And what it comes,
How do you deal with it, Keith?
Well, I'll have to admit, there was a time, when a newbie in collapse can become depressed. But you can put it in perspective. You can understand that really collapse is just part of the cycle of life. We're born, we live, we die. And while we're alive, we want to live good lives. And that's what we spend our lives doing. Finding out about collapse was not the same thing as finding out I was mortal. I already knew I was mortal. But putting it in that perspective. See, part of the problem is we believe in this fairy tale, I was just accusing it, the superheroes. We're all subject to these influences. And so then, some sober thought realizes, the world cannot feed the number of people that are going to be here in 20 years. There's not enough stuff to go around, period. End of story. That's what how do you deal with that? Because the problem is you weren't thinking right to begin with. It's actually, you have to understand that you control the things you can control, and, the serenity prayer comes into play here. Worry about the things you can worry about. Enjoy the things that, worry about your friends, your life, doing something good within the realm you can. And, the big picture, you could never influence that to begin with. I think that, so I'm still evolving with this.
Oh, we all are, yeah. So
But that's basically the advice I give is to understand that is put it in perspective. Understand that this is just life. Deal with it, and stop pretending that it's not there, because that's the real issue.
when you wrote here to me, the best way forward is to change lifestyles. Are you saying that in the spirit of the best way forward as individuals to react to this, or are you suggesting that where are you on this whole consumer and lifestyle choices at this point, making any difference to the big global picture versus making a difference to your own personal life? I think you understand what I'm driving at here.
Yeah, I'm not a paragon of virtue. I don't have my cupboard stocked. I'm not a survivalist. Basically, I'm a busy worker. After this interview, I'll be going into work and I'll be putting in 8 hours. And I'm living a life. I'm, saving money and preparing for, the days when I can't work. And within that, I'm enjoying life. I'm writing. I'm doing projects. But am I doing anything to show an example? I wish I would. I wish I really could, but it's hard because we're not islands. We live with other people, and people will. If you start acting differently, it will be pointed out to you very quickly.
Yeah.
And so doomers. I think we have to be a little careful about not being too strange. We don't, I don't bring up collapse to people. It's the last thing I do. I never, if somebody brings that to me, that's great.
Yeah.
But
it never happens though, except when you're down here with our fellow. With our fellow collapsitarian doomers. You do not go around, you like put it on the web for anyone, like I do. You put it out there on the web and social media for anyone who wants to talk about this story, but you don't walk around broadcasting this in your daily social intercourse with people.
That's right. I'm just trying to survive. Capitalism has knocked kicked me in the curb a couple times. We've had a few recessions, and I've had a couple bouts of unemployment, and right now I'm doing very well. And so, in a sense, I've gone through a couple personal depressions. I remember, my parents' generation. The parents that, people that actually lived through this depression got very different ideas of how to deal with finances. And, they became savers, and something that America doesn't know about anymore. And I'm one of them. I've gone through some personal times that I know it can all get taken away real quick. And so, in a sense, I am preparing in a financial way. I'm in a position where I'm able to work and save money, and I'm preparing for the future, hoping things last long enough I can kind of buy my way out, to put it bluntly.
So you're, as I say with people, I don't know how old you are. I'm getting ready to hit 60 in a couple of months. I'm still holding on to, I am going to just get out of here with what I say with the screen door hitting me on my guilty ass on the way out. Do you think that that you're going to beat the total breakdown? Are you going to get out of here in time, or are you starting to, like me, or are you starting to question maybe even people our age really will see some of this?
We're in the same age group, and the wheel's spinning. That roulette wheel is going around, and where that ball's going to come up red or black in our lifetime. And yeah, things are crazy. We got Trump. We got we have freedom molecules. We're going to start exporting energy. That's crazy.
The freedom molecule. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's in the news. I see the oil trains, that's the people that were into collapse 20 years ago, that they weren't aware. That's one lesson that the collapse neighborhood has learned, is that the degree that people will technically innovate to not deal with issues is totally amazing.
It is.
But we're overpopulated. Supply chains are just beginning to show stress. The whole Trump tariff thing is kind of an expression of that. Trade getting messed up and existing arrangements breaking down. And will they break down enough so that in our lifetime we'll see it? It could happen.
I always have to ask my guest, are you a father and or a grandfather?
I am a father, and it's hard for my son. I mean, he's seen me grow up, or he's grown up seeing me from kind of seeing the end of the world, and he respects my point of view. He agrees with it, basically. But, having collapsed politics is not an easy thing. But yeah, I want him to have a future, and it's unconscionable to have a society that does not care about their own children and grandchildren.
Is he planning to have kids, or do you know?
I'm not sure. He hasn't yet. He has a girlfriend, so that's possible. But he's finding himself.
But he is going to see. I mean, he is definitely gonna be seeing this unfolding to where there's going to be no denying it. Don't you think?
Well, absolutely. That's the equations say that. Okay, fracking can't go on forever. Okay, the energy return on energy invested can only go down. The initial wells produce something, but it's going to be harder and harder to find. And to try and pretend that America can maintain squandering energy the way we do and expect, a standard of living that's continues to be decent for a large number of people. The number of people, we're splitting into two Americas now and have been for a long time. We have a small group that's getting richer and a much larger group that's getting poorer. And, that's where things are going. This will not end well.
It will not. It will not end well, to put it mildly. So, what I'm hearing a lot from you, so you are definitely in the peak oil camp.
Yes.
Okay, but you're not.
So my blog,
what I'm not
my
hearing.
blog's very heavy on environmental issues because they are interrelated. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not hearing any mention that you're in the near-term human extinction group, that we're going to be extinct in 10 years. I'm not hearing that at all.
I've met Guy McPherson. I've gone to a talk of his. I've spent a lot of time looking into that issue. It's something that I have been very concerned about myself because I know about the methane in the Arctic. And, when that stuff comes out, it's bad news. But a problem with the near-term extinction people is, you know, I don't think they have their both oars in the water, really.
Which oar is in and which oar is out? I am not a member of that club either.
The aura of concern is certainly there. That's good, but the reality is not that from a scientific point of view, they're as deluded as the denialists.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the truth is climate change is real. It's caused by human activity. But are we going to become a second Venus? No, that's not. You know, I'm interested from the technical point of view. What is actually going on? What has the historical record shown before? You know, the idea that humans could become extinct forgets that the Arctic could probably support, a jungle.
That's where it's headed.
You know, five or 10 people can get through. I mean, Kurt Vonnegut wrote Galapagos.
Yeah, that's
and
great,
in
great
that
book. Yeah.
you've got a group of people living in the Galapagos Island. You know, a couple million years in the future, but that's the only place there are people, and they're not even people anymore because they eat fish and they're dumb. You know, but there you've got a novel that portrayed a scenario where you did not have human extinction, but from a practical point of view, you did. And so from a practical point of view, will we have, does near-term human extinction hold any cachet? From that point of view, and from a personal point of view, if you were at Chernobyl 30 years ago, you experienced collapse. Your life may have been ruined. You may have died from radiation poisoning. Your life was turned upside down if you were in the right place, or the wrong place, rather. And, so as the years go by, there'll just be more and more and more and more personal stories of collapse until it becomes the majority. And then will a remnant get by? Will a remnant survive? Who cares? What we should be caring about is we could be trying to save who we would, doing what we can to mitigate things, to make the best world we can, and to understand that these things just don't happen without effort, and that America's net has not been paying attention to their future.
That's clearly evident with the last election. Although, I mean, I don't want to get into a political thing, but with the two candidates we had, you could say that about either one of the candidates. That America, and it's not just America now with this. What is I don't know. I just can't get away from this new guy down there in Brazil who I call Bolsonaro. I have been almost more rattled by him than I was Donald Trump. That I cannot believe who we have in charge of the Amazon rainforest right now. We have handed over the chicken house to the single biggest fox on the planet, and our chickens are getting ready to get gobbled. What is your opinion of that guy, and what does that say to you about the direction this whole planet's heading? That we could have someone like that guy in charge of the Amazon rainforest today.
Yeah, there seems to be a battle in the human condition. The good and evil. We have, the classic cartoon with the little guy on one shoulder and the guy with the halo on the other. And, people have different worldviews. One of the things I've done in my life, one of the things we've all done in our lives, is made the mistake that everybody else thinks the way we do. Okay? And, you're talking about, more about, I can't even say his name right, but I know you're talking about, guy. Yeah. And, he's a fascist. And we have fascism light.
In this country.
It's a different difference in extreme. If you okay, now, one thing about, I said, early in this interview, that people are directed by their social approvals, their social concerns. That's what really drives human activity. And one of the things, my wife gets mad at me sometimes. I start talking. She asks me questions. I start talking about hunter-gatherers, people, and people walking around, for 100,000 years and stuff. And one thing that happened during that time was that you made a distinction between people who were in your group and people who were not in your group. And so you're Bolsonaro, he has his own group. And he really doesn't care about people who are outside his group.
No, he doesn't.
But you see, from that point of view, he's no different than this is the evil, that says we could all do the horrors of the Nazis and all that. Books and articles can be written about that stuff. How do you get around it? What's the answer? Because if that's the way, it's something we all suffer from, and if that's the end of the story, we can all just give up. But you know what? There is a way out. And the way out is to understand that the human race, all people, are your brothers and sisters. That's all there is to it. No matter what color they are, help them across the street. We're in this to help each other out. We're in this to save as many as we can. And making distinctions between who deserves this and who deserves that. Hey, ask for accountability, demand accountability, but let's just start loving each other. People, like you're talking about, fascists, they have their own worldview. And can they be converted? That'd be another interview. But the important thing is to understand that there's different ways to look at life. There's different perspectives, and which one is a good one, which one is a bad one. His is obviously bad, but it's very popular.
Yes. Well, anyway, I am would love to keep right on with this line of talk, but we are 37 minutes into this, and I want to talk about your excellent website. My dog Sancho Panza absolutely loves the name of your website, chasingthesquirrel.com by K-Dog and his excellent adventures. So give us a little for anyone who is down in this rabbit hole, not familiar with chasingthesquirrel.com. You have this is truly the one-stop shop for the Doomosphere, as I call it, where Keith has put together this unbelievable compendium. I sat here and counted them. 276 websites that you go on his site, and he has a menu of 267 internet websites. I love to see Collapse Chronicles coming in at number 3 of 276. I do appreciate that. We have 64 newspapers. You just can go pretty much anywhere on here. You can close your eyes, move your cursor, and hit, and just be like, stick your thumb in the cherry pie and see what comes out. This is unbelievable. How did you give us a little bit of history? How did you come up with the idea? When did you start developing this K-Dog and his excellent adventures, and where are you with it today, and what do you hope to do with it in the future? Just run with your website and plug yourself here.
Oh boy, it's been a long story. Even how where the name K-Dog came from is a story in itself. But okay, about the time of the Twin Towers, back that a few years later, The End of Suburbia was a DVD that James Howard Kunstler was in, among others, and I took my son to see it. We went to a neighborhood where there was a movie. I don't know, I'm just trying to describe it here. I'll stop. Anyway, we saw the DVD with a small group of people. It was obvious to me that there was an FBI agent there undercover who tried to derail the discussion afterwards, very successfully, by the way.
Oh, he succeeded. There you go.
And I started blogging online. Counselor had a blog. I started commenting there, and things started happening of a very strange nature. And I realized that if I wanted to get any message out, I needed to have my own platform. And so I started chasing the squirrel just to have my own place, just so I could say, put out something if I wanted to.
I have to ask how you came up with the name Chasing the Squirrel.
Oh, chasing the squirrel, there was an actual dog who liked to chase squirrels.
I can relate to that, brother. Yes.
Yeah, and her name was Bailey, and it was a place I worked at. It was a place where you could bring your own dog. She wasn't my dog, but I give her treats, and she really liked me more than anybody else. And she loved to chase squirrels, so that's where that came from. K-Dog itself was somebody complimented me. I had made a comment, and they had said, K-Dog, you're right on, and that became, like 2002 or something like that. I picked that up and said, hey, that's used it ever since.
So when did Chasing the Squirrel is about what are we? I'm trying to follow your timeline. 15 years ago? What year did you start compiling?
Probably, I think I may have started that as early as 2007, 8. Oh, wow. I think so. Yeah. But it didn't do much, well, see, one thing about it is everything on that site I do by hand. Okay, my site is totally different than anyone else's in that way. I don't use WordPress. I don't use a thinking machine software for a forum. Everything I write from scratch, and there are reasons for that. It's very complicated, but when you see the newspapers, I can put in a newspaper and take it out real quick because I've written software that does that for me. So that website is now a personal project where I just like to mess around with doing programming things as well. So it's not going to go away from that point of view for sure. And yes, I wanted to get something where people could go and find an alternative where they could get information without, having to go down the rabbit holes and spend a whole bunch of time.
It is all here, folks. It is 276 websites, people having this conversation. I guess that's encouraging. How do you find? How do you find all of these people down here in this rabbit hole? And what criteria do you use when you're coming across a new website and deciding, is this something I feel is something that should be shared with a wider audience? What criteria do you use? I noticed that Collapse Chronicles is in here, but another channel we don't talk about on the Collapse Chronicles is not in here, which actually has a whole lot more subscribers than this one. So I'm just curious how you make the cut to get on Chasing the Squirrel. What you look for?
Yes, it's an evolving process, and basically, I have developed at this point a kind of a sixth sense, so that I come across a blog or come across a reference to a newspaper, I'll look at it and is that something I want? And I'll very quickly determine, without any good criteria, by the way, because I don't have time for good criteria. You know, I can put something up just because I like something I saw in it. And then I can look at it a few days later, and if I see something that I don't like, I'll take it out. And I'm actually, what I want to do with it is I'm trying to figure out ways so that people can actually suggest sites and put them in there, and then have visitors like vote them up and down, and organize lists that way. And then I can look at the ends and say, okay, this one, people are not liking this one. It's not saying what we want. It's not putting out positive messages. It's not telling the truth. Let's get rid of it. And whereas the other one, you know. So I'm telling you, it's going to get better. It's an evolving process, but I didn't know it was so great. Thank you very much for the compliment. I didn't know I was doing that. I just started putting up stuff that I found interesting, because it's, you know, wasteland out there. And there are forces that are directing web searches. And I wanted to present to, you know, an alternative voice to that.
Well, I want to read from your introduction to your site. So one thing, you take these 276. I want people to know there is some sort of differentiation. It goes, the menu above has been alphabetized relative to links of the same color. So they're color coded to it, like collapse versus climate change. I don't know. My only recommendation I might put is maybe split this up a little bit, where you color code them and have just an overall catch-all phrase. But I'm curious about this. I have augmented my list with the alleged fake news list being pushed by the deep state. There are many sites.
Oh, yes. That worked out very well.
I've never heard this word, propomat list, which I liked and are respectable. There are also some bizarre, wacko, and from my point of view, disgusting sites. I hope that doesn't include Collapse Chronicles. For now,
no, most of them have been taken down. Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. So run with that. Talk about this alleged fake news list being pushed by the deep state. What are you referring to there?
Okay. ProPublica is a newspaper, magazine, whatever. I think it's West German in origin. It has something to do with Glenn Greenwald and his group. And anyway, they had a list, you know, and there was the whole thing about the fake news websites and this. And people are talking about them. What are we talking about? Why don't we look at them? Why don't we see what they actually are? And so I went and I got them, and this worked out very great, by the way, because you know, and I didn't just get the list from that list either. However, I collected these websites. I was just trying to get them, you know, and it worked out very great, because as the years went by, the ones that were phony baloney, you know, they didn't ever update. They never got better, but there were some alternative news sites that were called fake news so that people would stay away from them. And so they naturally got pulled in with the group of the fake ones. And so I look at them years later and I say, oh, this is great. You know, that people have been working hard. They're intelligent. They're talking about good stuff. And so in a way, it was that list was a godsend, because it gave me a group of websites, and all that I had to do was wait for time to go by to tell me which ones were good and bad. So I'm kind of pleased about that contribution. But yeah, there's, you know, I'm not sure exactly what everything is in there. I will be looking at things harder. I'm spending more time on the site, and you know, I'm concerned about truth. I want the truth to be known. The truth is out there. Let's see it.
So what is the definition of define the term propornot? Is it propornot?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the name. I think it's, like I say, that's of a German origin.
Okay, I see.
Has,
Okay, yeah, all right.
you know, and, oh, I'd have to do some online research to find out exactly where it is, what it's doing these days.
So, what are your? I mean, obviously, Collapse Chronicles is your number one favorite out of the 276. But throw out other than that, because we can't. You know, in all fairness, it's so far above the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
But what behind Collapse Chronicles? What are your top five out of your 276? If people go on there and feel completely overwhelmed with your encyclopedia of doom and gloom, give us your top five recommendations before we wind up this interview.
Okay, well, I'll plug you as number one. Number two.
I'm sorry, number one was what? Oh, we
yours.
oh, of course. Well, yeah, of course. Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
So, all right, next.
Yeah.
The next five.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Doomstead Diner?
Oh yeah, that's where I found Gail Zawacki, as a matter of fact, who I think is the one who recommended you. So, oh yes, Doomstead Diner.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Excellent.
she can be number three then, since she recommended me. But number two, I'll go with the Doomstead Diner.
All
I
right.
actually know the person who runs that. We've met. We actually went to see the eclipse together, and so that's one thing that I've wanted to. I really appreciate, Sam, you reaching out to me and us having this conversation, because that's one thing I'd really like to see more of is collapsed people communicating with each other.
Yeah. So we have Doomstead Diner. Give us four
Yeah.
more, and then we'll have to wrap this up. I noticed my.
Okay, well now I
battery
have to
was-
wiggle. I have to walk over to my desk and wiggle my mouse and sit down here. Oh, I got my coffee cup here. Let me upset that.
Oh, just pick
I've got a
some
lot of
off the
stuff
top of your head, because we have to be wrapping up here in a couple of minutes.
Okay, but hang on, we're right here. You know what? I have some other stuff there. You know, there's even, if you dig hard enough, there's even a half-written short story. I mean,
There's everything on here, guys. Every imaginable. This man has done his homework.
okay, take a look at Dark Green Mountain. That's also a person who's kind of in the Doomstead Diner group, but he's got his own stuff. It's pretty good. But, you know, I've got a lot of stuff up there where, you know, I talk about, you know, Jevons, you know, I talk about Hubbard's Peak. There's a lot of technical information in there, you know, about exponentials and the math and, you know, but you asked to see, and also take a look at Craig Diller's site. He was the one that gave me information. That's just for background, though. That just you know, helped me figure some stuff out. You know, I really, people just got to explore here.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And,
I'm telling you, folks, just go ahead and literally close your eyes and just hit one, and you will never have to leave chasingthesquirrel.com. You will have more squirrels than you will ever be able to track down. But Keith Hayes, it has been. I just wanted to make sure we plug chasingthesquirrel.com as an indispensable resource for anybody trying to figure out what the doomers are talking about. But as right before these batteries collapse, Keith Hayes, if you are familiar with this with my website at all, you know I always wrap up these conversations with this question, that if you were not talking to Sam Mitchell at Collapse Chronicles and you were actually had the mainstream media sticking a microphone in your face saying, Keith Hayes, give us your 60-second message to humanity, what would that soundbite sound like?
Wake up, pay attention to the future. Let's have an accounting about how many people in the world, how much we eat, how, you know, what the world can support, and let's make arrangements so that we can go on forward in the best way that we can. You know, how to do it, I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure I have that many. You know, that's going to have to come out with people talking about issues they have not been talking about, issues that have been avoided. So that's my message. Stop avoiding the issues.
All right, well, that is exactly what we are trying to do right here on Collapse Chronicles. But Keith Hayes, I hate to wrap this up, but as they say, global industrial civilization is getting ready to collapse on this camera. So we really, really appreciate you taking an hour out of your schedule. I know you need to get to work back in the matrix, but
yes, back in the
stick
matrix.
around
You're right.
stick around for a minute. But right now, folks, we just have to say goodbye, Keith Hayes, and keep up the good fight, brother.
Thank you very much, Sam, and I will.
Bye, guys.